All righty. Good morning, everyone. This is the Communicating in Uncertain Times webinar, thanks to Sked Social. Thank you for joining us this morning. We'll give it just a few minutes and let everyone sort of get settled in. There's quite a few of us right there ready to join us, so thank you for joining us this morning. It may be early where you are, it may be late. We appreciate your time. Oh, wow, look, they're all streaming in. I love it. All right, we've got live on Facebook, we're recording, we're ready to go, I think. While we wait for everyone, why don't we get started with a poll? Cats or dogs? Which one is your favorite? I love it. Dogs, yes. I think I'm a little bit biased. You can see what I've got with me. I love it. Other. All right. Is that a budgie? Is that what do we have there? I love it. There is one. Oh, for both. We need an option for both. No, you got to pick one or the other. You're either a dog person or a cat person, according to what we're seeing this morning.
You could be bipedal. I feel
I like that word.
Bipedal.
Well,
bipedal. God, that's a word.
I love it.
Isn't it?
I'm disappointed by how many people are saying dogs, though.
That's because dogs are the best, Hugh. It's obvious.
Definitely not.
Oh, goodness. Goodness. Well, good morning, everyone. It looks like we've got a fair few of you joining us, and we do have a fair bit to get through this morning, so we might get started here in just a second. We do have the first poll going. There's majority of you have let us know that dogs are the way forward, and I 100% agree with you. So welcome, good morning. This is the very first upskill and chill session brought to you by Sked Social. My name is Meg Coffey, and I'm super excited to be spending the morning with you. I'm joining you from Perth, and we've got speakers from all over Australia that will be joining you joining us, I should say, as well. So everyone in social media wants to go viral, just not like this. We're in times of global turmoil, and like many of our customers, it's a hard time to run our business. This webinar is about communicating in uncertain times. We hope it will be a frank chat about brand messaging and keeping in touch with customers in a time of COVID-19. As I said, my name is Meg Coffey, and I'll be the facilitator for this morning's session. And you can find me on Twitter at TexanMeg if you want to shout out. Thank you for joining us this morning for what I hope will be a fun and informative, robust chat. And I know with the panelists that we're going to bring you that we will have a bit of fun. Just a bit of housekeeping. If you guys do have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A. We will open up at the end of the session to you guys for the Q&A. So feel free to use that, or we've got the chat screen. Should you not be able to make the whole session, if you need to pop out, that's fine. We are recording it, and the wonderful guys at Sked will make sure that you get a copy of it if you have registered. The format for this morning is pretty simple. We've got 3 awesome panelists from various industries, and we're all going to share our thoughts on what's going on at the moment. When we're done, we'll open it up to the Q&A. And we're also streaming this live on Facebook. So if you're watching us on Facebook, hello. And we will have someone watching the comments there for when it comes time for Q&A. All right, shall we get into it? First of all, we have the lovely Hugh Stevens. Hi, Hugh.
Hello, everyone.
Hugh is the founder of Sked Social and social media strategy expert. Hugh knows audience targeting and messaging like no one else in the business. He can't wait to discuss technology's role in today's messaging and branding experience and how to move forward efficiently. You can find Hugh on Twitter at Hugh Stevens. Morning, Hugh. Wave hi to Hugh.
Thanks, Meg.
And for those of you that haven't clicked, Hugh's also the founder of Sked Social, as in the guys that are bringing you guys this webinar today. So thank you very much for pulling this together, Hugh. Next, we've got up Matt Rosich. He's the CMO at Close Comfort, which is a national consumer goods company. Morning, Matt. Matt's joining us from Perth, so it is a little bit early. Thanks for joining us. Matt has a 10-year history in marketing and brand management. He'll provide some deep insights into tactical and strategic execution that you can implement in your own business or brand. And just like Matt's Twitter account, Matt Gets Ranty, I'm sure that he will share lots of fun opinions with us today. Good morning, Matt.
How are you?
Oh, I like what I see in this next one. This is Ann Shea. She's a digital communications and content expert with extensive experience managing larger brands, including government and universities. She's currently the content project manager at the University of Melbourne, and you can find Ann on Twitter at Annie_Shea. And who's this?
And this is Agro, which people will get if they're of a very specific generation that watch Saturday morning cartoons. Yeah.
Love the name.
Yeah.
I love it.
Scratch at my door. He would continue to scratch at my door until I let him in. So here we are.
Awesome. Well, I've got my Labradoodle Henry here, who has to be a part of everything. So no doubt he will join us at some point during this hour. So thank you guys very much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day, especially when there's so much going on in the world. Why don't we get started? And why don't we'll start with you, Hugh. Can you just give us a little bit more background on sort of you and how you're currently been impacted from the virus and how as a service as a software type of company, things are going for you?
Sure. So, I mean, I guess for us, we're lucky our whole team is remote. So the work from home change luckily hasn't had much of an impact on us. And we've got all the tools in place. Probably the biggest thing for us is obviously our customers range from small business through enterprise and in almost every industry imaginable. And so we've certainly seen some customers have, it's quite a strong effect. We have customers in hospitality or agencies that service hospitality businesses. And that's, that's a hard industry to be in right now. And whether it's, trying to make the pivot into delivery, whether it's, retail, same thing is, trying to shift into an e-commerce model, sometimes, very, very quickly. Or, having to, if you're a bar, in Australia, you're pretty much shut down now. It's quite difficult, I think, to work out exactly what to do and how do you deal with it. And, do you kind of post through it? Do you just kind of post through the challenge? Do you just kind of go quiet? And as a business owner, and, I'm obviously run a small business as well. It's really hard to work out, and the world falls down around your head, and it happens probably every 6 months for everyone. It's definitely challenging for some of our customers. Others of our customers, I think, are going gangbusters. So they're, anyone who's in pure play e-commerce or, supermarket delivery or toilet paper. It's a great time to be a marketer, but I think it's hard to work out exactly how to handle the messaging without kind of coming across as a bit too on the nose.
Yeah, exactly. And that is something that we will look at. That leads really into you, Matt. I mean, being from consumer goods, yes, you're not necessarily a good that is you do air conditioning, which is not necessarily something that everybody needs at all times. It's a discretionary item for some.
Very much so, yeah.
But how are you finding things? Are people reassessing spends? How has this impacted the consumer goods side of things?
Well, the difference with this one is I can't think of a single person that hasn't been affected. Everyone's in this. So it doesn't really matter what type of business you're in, you're impacted. So yeah, it's affected us. It's affected us internally where we've had to adjust. Luckily, we've spent the last year moving everything, setting up systems. So we're all on the cloud. That made moving remotely really quite simple. So there was minimal impact there, but certainly as far as e-commerce and consumer attitudes, everyone's deciding at the moment what's essential and what isn't, and you don't get to decide where you sit. So everything that you've been doing up to date is where you find out where that has connected. And yeah, you have to be very careful with the messaging that you're not seen as being predatory, trying to I guess, move this towards your advantage in a way that is all about you, because it isn't. So yeah, we've been kind of balancing that where in some ways it's business as usual in regards to we're a small business, so we need to sell product, but we're very, very careful about how we communicate and very conscious of the fact that we're not people don't have relationships with brands. Some people get really caught up with they think that they're a really big factor in people's lives, and we're not. So we try and position ourselves where people find us as relevant, but the rest of the time we're trying to focus more on branding at the moment, so that we're not an interruption. So that when they show interest, then we'll put products in front of them and convert them that way. And that's been working. We're still ticking along. We're also in 4 countries, so not every country is in the same place. So we do have that advantage.
That's definitely an interesting thing. And we'll come back to brand communications and sort of how they've changed in a second. But I think that is an interesting point of view. You know, this is a global thing. It has hit everybody, and it's different. The reactions, everything is different in every state and every country. You know, in Western Australia, we seem to be very lucky. You know, we seem to be getting things under control. And so what we're allowed to do is completely different than, say, what they're allowed to be doing in New York City, or where they're allowed to be doing in London or Melbourne, for that matter. So, Anne, you know, you work in the education space. I mean, and what an upheaval that industry has had.
Yeah, and I guess I would say that our brand does have a really important personal place. Like, there's the odd brand like ours. We've got international students who are stuck here. We've got people who are scared for their future. So it's been enormous for education across the entire sector, particularly the international sector. Like, domestic students are obviously anxious and concerned. A lot of students have lost work. They tend to be the most vulnerable. So I think the education sector in particular has had to be incredibly good at reading the room. So being clear, being truthful, going back to brand principles, and reassuring people wherever they can be reassured. So all of the universities, all of the TAFEs have really had to look back to who they are as a brand and where they can assist. And where people need clarity, where people need help. And then trying to pare down their comms. I've seen this across the whole sector, paring down those comms to what people need. Where can we contribute? So the University of Melbourne, where I work, there's a lot of research being done on COVID-19. That is relevant brand communications. That helps people in their daily lives. Apart from that, very little in the way of, like, nobody's buying an ad shell right now. Nobody's doing a TV campaign. Like, this is noise, and it's disrespectful. So that's being pared right back. So the whole advertising spend, completely different on the whole sector.
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, that leads me into my next question. And, you know, and I guess that it's a good time to ask this next question about, or to launch this next poll. Today's April Fool's Day, and, you know, all of us are changing our communications, you know, but then we have to remember that it's April Fool's Day. And in my opinion, April Fool's Day is canceled. Like, this is not the year that we should be doing April Fools. I've seen one so far. It was funny, but it doesn't feel right. So, I mean, how about you guys? I mean, I guess that's sort of 2 questions. Do you guys think that April Fool's jokes are appropriate? And how are you guys changing your brand communication? How are you reading the room, as you said, Anne?
We didn't do an April Fool's joke. For us as a brand, it was cancelled. I think you've got to read the room as a brand, but I do suspect it will get lost in the noise, frankly.
Yeah, I think you could do incredible creative right now, but just no one cares. Like, you know, it's that unfortunate thing, I think, where most consumers are in the model where every day, for better or worse, it's just a continuous stream of news about, you know, COVID-19 and the latest updates, the latest stats, the latest policy changes. You know, even incredible creative won't break through. And even if it does, it's going to kind of come across really weird because it's just not what people care about. And, you know, like, it's not a, you know, we're not at a regular time, you know, at this point in the kind of the cycle. And so I think, you know, like Matt was saying earlier, I think it's just, you know, it's hard to really do anything other than say, well, you know, if you're looking for our services or our goods or whatever it is, then sure, we're happy to provide that information to you. But you can't really play the same game of being a lot more pushy than perhaps you would have, you know, at a different time.
Yeah, I think what you said before about reading the room is really important too, because you have to think about what the whole purpose of April Fool's campaigns are, which is to create kind of confusion and, you know, a little bit of anxiety, you know, in a fun way when things are relatively normal. But when people are already feeling anxious and confused, don't add to it. It's literally fuel on fire, and it will just create resentment at worst, and just make you look ridiculous at best. And just not, it just reminds people that you're out of touch because you think everything's fine and hey, here's something that's funny. It's just everything at the moment has to be about thinking about the customer. We'll find out who actually is customer focused rather than just talking about it. That's madness to even think about doing that right now.
I think there's a lot of, I've seen chat on Twitter about, we'll come out the other side knowing which businesses really care about their employees and which businesses really care about the customers and which ones were really in it just to be money grabbers, for lack of a better term. So when can we return to business as usual? Is there a business as usual to return to?
Yeah, we won't know for a while. I mean, I read a Bloomberg article a couple of days ago, which an Australian economist was saying that on the current modelling, it could take 3 years before we're back to pre-virus levels. So anyone who talks about this being over in weeks is deluding themselves. We have no idea.
Pre-virus levels of what? Spending?
Economy, spending, particularly confidence. I think with anything to do with spending, retail, things like that, you're dealing with confidence. So it's discretionary spend. And right now, no one's really got any discretionary spend. It's all salaries have been cut, jobs have been cut. Everyone's uncertain about what's going on. So you've got mortgages and rents and all sorts of fixed expenditure that people are fretting about. So any kind of confidence that people have is what's going to indicate how well the economy is doing. And that if this turns out to be the rest of the year, people coming back to some kind of reality, it's going to take time for people to adjust. There's going to be people who have to start being employed in some kind of great numbers. And then they're going to be in a position to feel confident about spending and all that kind of stuff. But it's going to take time. Whether it turns out to be 3 years, who knows? But
do you think, and where do you think education falls in that? How long do you think it's going to be for you guys?
I think that we have to get used to saying we don't know. We don't know what kind of tools will work. We don't know what will happen with online learning and how confident people will be. I suspect there's some developers doing some really quick work to push any beta stuff they had for online learning to live really, really fast right now. So I think it all remains to be seen, and it depends on the experience students have in the next few months. We really have to just be clear that we don't know yet. This is all really new for everybody. And brands have to be clear that they're not sure either. Otherwise, we're lying to our customers, lying to our constituents.
So how far ahead are you guys, excuse me, how far ahead are you guys planning at the moment? Planning strategies, planning comms? I mean, I know with my agency, we're not doing it, there's nothing scheduled. It is a day-by-day basis of what the comms will be.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
yeah, it's having some kind of a framework to work within. I think a strategy in regards to forecasting, I think, is really problematic, but it's day to day. So you might have a framework, and then if this happens, then you can move this way. And if this happens, then you can move this way. So there's some kind of framework that you can work within, but you have to pivot like daily. Things change all the time. I mean, in our business, you're dealing with logistics, and we've got 2 countries that are in lockdown, so there are no logistics. So you have to adjust for that, and you don't get any warning.
I would say it can be very helpful. Sorry, go on, Hugh.
No. Oh, I was going to say we've shuffled our entire product roadmap. You know, our engineering teams had to, it's annoyed the hell out of our product team. We've just literally changed all the priorities, refocused everything towards, the shift to work from home, and the various features we offer in terms of collaboration within teams. And, our marketing team is the same thing. We've had to shift the whole content strategy into talking about, issues like this and how we handle it and how we can help our customers through it. So it's pretty much been changing week on week, which, in some ways you say it shouldn't, and the principles certainly remain the same, but, we've had to change all of those priorities just by nature of, well, that's what the customers are demanding, and that's what the market needs.
Do we as marketers kind of get a pass on KPIs this year? I mean, how do we measure our KPIs this year?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
Day by day.
Every campaign was a success. Everything you did was wonderful, and we'll start again next year.
Yeah. I think anything that's not negative is a positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly any year-on-year comparisons are going to be out the window now. Quarter one this year is going to look very different to quarter one last year. But I think the other side is to say that there's also a part of as a marketer is trying to see set things up so that if and or when I guess things do recover, whether that is 6 months, 3 years, whatever it is, to make sure that you have everything in place and you have the things in place to be able to hit the ground running. And so you're not kind of continually playing this catch-up game if and when that does occur, because otherwise you'll just lose more and more time once consumer spending does start returning to normal. What are the things that people are going to start buying when they do start having more discretionary income again or more confidence, and how can you make sure that you have them front of mind and you have, I guess, capacity to deliver on them.
Yeah, I would say look back to your brand values, or if you don't have them, start thinking about them real hard right now. Have you articulated what you stand for as a brand, who you are and what you're trying to do to help in the world? If your activities now, as crazy as they will be, as unplanned as they will be, still relate back to who you are and what you're trying to achieve in the world, then as things alter and go back to whatever normal is going to look like, you're going to be in a much better position than if you are just flipping back and forth and going, well, this might work today. Let's see what we can grab. Always come back. Your brand doesn't change just because there's a crisis on. Your brand needs to be ready to be helpful and listen to people and be absolutely at the core of itself in a time of crisis, because that gives people a sense of stability, of normality, and that's comforting.
Yeah. And also there are lessons with in the past with things like depressions and recessions. A lot of the brands that became global were the ones who stayed relatively consistent when everyone else cut back. I mean, if you think about, if anyone's ever heard of CW Post, I don't think anyone ever has, but before the Great Depression, they were the biggest cereal maker in the world. They cut right back. And then this little company decided to keep going, and they were kept. So you can gain some advantage just by, no one is going to keep with the same marketing budgets, and you have to kind of cop it along with everyone else. But you can pivot. You can go, okay, well, we can't do TV and we can't do radio and we can't do any of the things that Anne was talking about. But you can, digital is and social and things like that can be something you can focus on. You can test and learn, and you can do a lot more with a lot less in the short term. But just that branding and just keeping consistent. And then talking to only those where they've shown some interest, and then you can kind of have a deeper conversation. But I think cutting right back and disappearing, you're going to start from so much further back when things do start returning to normal. So I think having some presence is still important.
Because
yeah. I think so.
Yeah, I think things are going to ramp up. Maybe not just as fast as they shut down, but I do think that things are going to ramp up pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's just where the purchases get back to that kind of level.
Yeah.
Anne?
Did you want to say something, Anne?
No, I just think I think that we're going to one-on-one chat and search. I think Matt's point is a really good one. We're not broadcasting to the thousands anymore. There aren't people driving past bus stops anymore. There aren't people in shopping malls. But there are people who are trying to achieve what they normally do, achieve that sense of normal. They'll be using search. They'll be hoping to talk to people one-on-one. They'll really value human connection right now. If you can provide that through your social, through really good SEO strategy, I think you're going to do really well.
Awesome. One last question for me before we sort of open it up to the Q&A. I don't know if you guys saw, but there was a Brazilian artist who sort of took some brand logos like the Starbucks logo and a couple other logos and reimagined them as to what they would look like in the times of COVID. So with the Starbucks logo, for example, rather than it just being the woman with the hair, it was a woman that had a mask over it. Some businesses then took it upon themselves to actually sort of recreate their logos, redo their logos, and show this social distancing. What do you guys think about campaigns like that? Should brands be jumping in there? Shouldn't Channel 9 have spread apart all the dots? Or does that come across as tokenism? I don't know about this one.
I hate it. I hate it passionately. It's like that.
Yes.
There's that Macca's one of the M being split in between, and it's like, this is classic. I'm an agency and I really want to win some awards, but the consumers don't give a rat's.
Yeah.
No, I think when someone else does it, then that can be cool. It's exactly the same as when brands try and do memes, and it's like, no, sit down. And right now, if you're not helping, and if it's not about your customers and your audience, shut up. Honestly, just like, if you're not helping, and if it's not about them, and if it's about you and how cool you think you're being, or how, hey, we're in this too, sit down and shut up. Honestly.
Yep. And if you're in that group that loves Macca's, if you find Macca's a comforting part of your everyday, you want Macca's to be the same damn Macca's always been, thank you, so that part of your day is normal. Like, just don't.
Are there any brands that are doing it right?
The quiet ones.
I love it. All right. Well, let's open it up to some questions from the audience. We had Elaine who couldn't join us this morning, so he emailed this one in. He says, in terms of speaking to an audience and taking a leadership role or engaging a community, what is the difference between taking advantage of the situation and gaining an advantage? I might throw that to you, Matt, because you kind of touched on that one.
It's a good question. I think gaining advantage really isn't up to you. I think definitely gaining versus taking. I mean, you don't want to be, like I was saying before, you don't want to be predatory or anything else like that. But gaining advantage, there are lots of examples of where the story that you've been telling or the brands have been telling, this is where it pays off. You think about the panic buying around toilet paper, which was completely ridiculous. But little Aussie companies like Who Gives a Crap have been flying because of it, because they have spent their time building a brand and telling a story. And this is where people have gone, oh, okay, I connect to this. It's actually, they're based here, they're doing good work. There's a social aspect to what they're doing. Right, I'm going to buy from them. So that's where they can gain advantage. I think there's been too much focus on messaging around marketing, because this time can actually give you an opportunity to look at your internal structures and things like, are the logistics the best that they can be? Is the product the best that it can be? Is the pricing where it should be? Those kind of internal kind of things that can help you gain advantage can actually have more of an impact than any kind of messaging that you can do. Particularly right now when things are uncertain and it's not guaranteed that trucks are always going to be on the road. If you can actually, pivot really quickly and adjust the experience for the customer and make it more positive for them, make it much more frictionless, give them some confidence that things, as Anne was talking about, things are still relatively normal and they haven't declined, then that's when you can take it. Well, you can gain an advantage that way, because you are much easier to deal with than, say, others in your space.
Actually, there's a really, really good example on a personal level. One of the things that I really enjoy doing when I drive to work, drive home, I drive past a little grocery shop and, a little Italian deli, fruit and veg, that kind of stuff. That's a pleasure in my day that was taken away from me when this all hit. Supermarkets, particularly right now, give me huge anxiety. So when this little deli turned around and said, you know what, we are going to switch to email. You can put in your order, and this is just a family business, but they really quickly stepped up and went electronic and said, email us in your order, we'll do our best. Within a week, they were doing deliveries around 5 different suburbs, so I can still have that in my day. My brand loyalty for that little shop is through the roof. I am never going back anywhere else. Like I'm so happy to have them back in my life, and they probably will never give up that service now, because I think people will value it enormously. All of the other shops around them who haven't moved because the mum and dad who run them have never thought about the internet and aren't in a position to move, they're going to be the ones who close, who can't respond when the government says, what are you doing to keep this safe?
Yeah. There's an interesting question that's come through that says, you know, when your audience doesn't know much about your business or you haven't built that community yet, you're starting small, you're a small little local one. What do you guys recommend in terms of starting the dialogue at the moment?
Start where they are.
With what?
Start where they are.
AR,
Not where
like,
you are.
oh,
So
okay,
there's no point opening a restaurant where you need people to come in. That's not where we are. So exactly to Anne's point is like restaurants and supermarkets, and everyone's kind of focused on local, which has been really good. Everyone's looking for ways they can help small business, particularly because they've seen so much big business, you know, kind of not worry about customers and really focus on themselves. So I think that kind of where you can start where people are and know that a lot of people aren't going to be in your physical location if you have one, that you can organize things like deliveries. You can make it easy. Do like Uber Eats was really good with doing and Deliveroo as well with doing no contact delivery. Taxis, I've seen Adam Ferrier with Thinkerbell has been pivoting 13 Caps to being a grocery delivery service. Things like that, where you're meeting people where they are and you're meeting a need in a way that they hadn't thought about. I think that's the way you start.
Yeah. Another great question that's come through that says, you know, when the world eventually returns to normal, every single man and his dog, yay dogs, will be shouting to get that business and get trading up and running. What do you guys recommend is the best way to approach not disappearing in the noise? How are we going to stand out from each other once we all ramp back up and start advertising again?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. And I sort of want to touch on one of the other questions as well about, you know, Facebook ads and things like that. You know, talking to a few of my my friends who are running, you know, a couple of $1 million a month on Facebook ads, you know, the cost of ads is plummeting in terms of the CPM and things like that, because simply fewer people are advertising. So one side of you goes, well, maybe this is you know, this is going to be an interesting time where you can, for a period, whether it might be, obviously you can't on Facebook, but in other channels, you might be able to pre-purchase a block and things like that. You know, if you have that capacity and capability, you might be able to actually take some degree of advantage of the fact that there's obviously a low CPM if you have something you can deliver in this, you know, in this period. But it's going to be really hard, I think, when everything comes back, because suddenly you're going to have the opposite happen, where suddenly all of the costs of everyone's, you know, ad buys are going to go through the roof, because everyone's going to want to try and kickstart themselves again. And I think I would say that the answer to that would be like good creative. Like, you know, I think we've often forgotten in marketing, particularly online marketing, we've forgotten the value of good creative. We're used to these kind of fairly bottom of funnel, you know, very clear sort of transactional messaging. But I think the brands that are going to come out of this best and have the most cut through will be the ones that actually, you know, have good creative and deliver that in, you know, in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
Particularly brands who help people through. I think if you, just to use that grocery example, but there's so many more. If there's a brand that's made you feel fantastic through this whole process, I think they'll be the ones who really succeed when we come out of it, because I don't think that loyalty will go away. Being meaningful to people when they're vulnerable has a lifetime impact.
Yeah, totally agree. People will remember who helped now.
Yeah, I've seen some interesting things about, you know, because we have so much more free time at the moment, you know, make sure that you're leaving Google reviews and Facebook reviews for the brands that are really sticking out and the ones that are being really helpful, because it is those reviews that when we come out the other side, that will mean even more. You know, then, you know, you've got a lot of businesses that aren't necessarily able to pivot. You know, they've had to go into temporary closure. What do you guys think about, you know, how would you recommend communicating through these times of, you know, we'll be back, we're just temporarily closed?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I know it personally because my wife runs an events business that there are no events because there are no events. So they've had that kind of mandated on them. So yeah, that's tough. It's being, again, going back to Anne's point before, it's just being honest about and being transparent about where you are and the fact that, hey, right now we can't do what we do. But she's kind of showing the stuff. I think it gets back to, I think to Hugh's point before, where being creative, I think, you know, reminding people of the work that you've done, and trying to have it be entertaining and just give people a little positivity. So a lot of it's been kind of reminding people of the work that her team and her business has done, and just keeping that kind of going as a little reminder during this time. Especially in her business, you have to be doing well to then have discretionary spend above that people want to run events, to get people in. So that's going to take some time. So it's just keeping little reminders and that kind of stuff. And I think to the point before, I think if you want to gain an advantage, then you want to take advantage now and just be in front of people, because then you'll be starting from a much better position when things get going again. I think if you're waiting until things get good before you start, you're going to be that much further behind, because you won't have that brand loyalty and that you won't be top of mind that you have been through this whole period.
One thing might be to think about what you can do when you do reopen for the customers who've supported you, who've left those reviews, who even just stayed in touch with you over that time. Is there something special you can do to thank them? Even if it's very small, could you start up with a dinner? If you're a restaurant, can you start up with a dinner that's just for those people to say thank you? I'm purely spitballing here. It'll be different industry by industry, but recognition of help, I think, would be seen very positively.
And you know, this is an interesting question that's come through from Donna. Renegotiating, you know, your plan stuff, your plan to spend. If you had, you know, we've talked a little bit about, you know, now is not the time for out of home, you know, no bus shelter ads, no shopping mall, things like that. What do you do if you've spent a fair bit of money, you've pre-planned, you've given the agency the money, and we can't do those things anymore? How do you guys suggest, I guess, talking to people, I'm answering my own question maybe.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's two sides of this. One side is, you know, you can, you know, I think with some of the contracts that you see people have gotten themselves into, one of the things is, you know, if the purchaser is a small business, as a vendor, you can hardly be like, no, we're going to hold you to this contract, because for all you know, like, they can't pay their staff, you know, and absolutely, like, staff should come before worrying about ad spend or like anything like that. Like, I think there's one side of it is just like purely that side. Where I think, or my view is, you know, where that vendor, where that advertiser, and Donna's question was about a local newspaper, for example, you know, where that advertiser is themselves a small business, often it's something where, you know, like if you, and again, it's a question of capacity to some degree of, like, you know, obviously if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. But often, you know, from my view, I would say, talk to them and say, hey, look, you know, I get it. It's really hard for you. We want to keep, you know, we're happy to keep this payment going, but you've got to realize that we're not going to get the reach. We're not going to get the results that we get. Can we actually, instead of, you know, us saying, let's pause this spend for 3 months, why don't you give us 3 months once everything's recovered? You just throw 3 months on the contract or 2 months on the contract or whatever it is at essentially no cost. So rather than taking the cash away now, you're still getting the benefit of the spend, but you're acknowledging that let's move that spend, let's move the impact of that spend, not, being in your cash flow essentially, to a later time, because then obviously, you're able to, be able to smooth this cash flow and hopefully not have, have the whole thing implode. It's useless to you if the small newspaper just closes. then your whole spend is gone entirely. So, there's, I think, a little bit of creativity that you can do with vendors where you can and where you have the capability to be able to do that and help them.
Yeah. Sadly, small newspapers are folding all over the place, particularly regionally. So, yeah, it's a tough one. But again, I think it comes back to people remember who helped. So if you're a media company and you're trying to throw your weight around saying you signed this, do you really think those clients are going to come back to you when things are good? I don't think so.
Yeah, true. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. We've got time to sort of wrap things up. I want to ask each of you one last question as we do wrap this session up. There were some awesome questions that came through. I hope that we were able to get to them. And I really appreciate both the viewers' time as well as our panelists. But as we finish things up, what is your one piece of advice for brand comms at the moment as we currently stand? We'll start with you, Matt.
Brand comms,
communication.
Oh, comms. Don't tell. Your communications are your actions right now. It's not about what you say you do. I mean, if I see one more bloody email from someone going on about COVID-19 and how seriously they're taking it, all it's done is remind people of all of the random businesses that have their email address and has given them an excuse to unsubscribe. Now, shut up. We're all taking it seriously. It's like the biggest comms message is realizing it's not about you as a marketer or as a brand. So do and don't say what you do. I mean, if you think about the things that like Louis Vuitton and Dyson have been doing, where they've pivoted really quickly and they've been doing ventilators and making hand sanitizer and that kind of stuff. A lot of that has been done and you've only heard about it after the fact. That's doing. But others have been trying to turn it into a PR exercise and, hey, look what we're doing. At the end result is still the same, but I think it's the way that you handle it that kind of shows who you are. So I think at this point it's do and maybe let others do the messaging for you and talk about you. But don't say, hey, how good are we? Or we're taking this seriously, because everyone's taking it seriously.
I love that. Anne, how about you? Your advice?
Mine is to stay true to who you are as a brand. And that can be because your brand's pure existence in normality can be reassuring. If you're looking to help, how would your brand help? Not who you are as a person, as a team. I understand that everyone will want to be doing 1,000 different things, but stay true to who you are as a brand. People will like that in and of itself. And for sure, go and do your charitable stuff. For sure, be who you are as human beings, do the best you can, but stay true to the brand purpose and you'll come out of this stronger.
I love it. And Hugh?
I think drop the tokenism. Like, I like Matt, it's like I can now recognize from the email footer of all of the emails I've been receiving exactly which email provider people are using, because I'm unsubscribing so frequently.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't care if you have transitioned your team to working from home, like good for you. Just,
so is everyone else.
Internal operationals, like it's like me saying, oh, congratulations, we've swapped out this web framework with this web framework. Like it's internal operational stuff that is unimportant to the customer, particularly at this point in time. And so I think, it is very much a situation of, if you have nothing to say, don't say anything. And, don't be afraid of that. But if you are going to say things, as Anne said, I think it's like, you need to have that strategy and that messaging in place of going, what are we doing? How can we help? And if you can't help, then just, shut up. But if you can help, and again, like creative options for that, like think about how you might be able to do that, or otherwise, like, we've seen some small businesses, for example, in local areas, like sort of, come together with a series of other businesses in the area and sort of create that kind of delivery service where you're sort of aggregating, I guess, the local demand of these small businesses and family operated businesses. You have those opportunities and ways to think about things that, might be a little bit out of the box, but, hey, take them while you can. But if you don't really have anything, then, just keep out of it. And I think it's, the worst thing I think you can do at this point is just deliver these sort of tokenistic messages because you feel like you need to. Like, I think most of those emails are just like because they feel like they have to. Like I was like, oh, do we need to do like a COVID-19 email? It's like, no, unlike GDPR, it's like you're not actually obliged to write an email at this point. You know, GDPR, you kind of had to because you're changing your privacy policy and things, but like, just you don't need to write an email. If you don't have anything to say, don't send everyone an email about it.
I love it. I love it. All right, guys, thank you very much. That wraps up this first session of Upskill and Chill with Sked Social. A massive thank you to Hugh and the team at Sked for their help in pulling this all together. And of course, to our panelists, Matt and Anne, thank you so much for joining us. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts with us this morning.
No problem.
We'll be hosting our next session this Friday morning at 10 a.m. and we'd love to have you join our discussion around tips and tricks in travel and tourism. What do we do when nobody is allowed to travel, and how do we survive as an industry? We welcome everyone to attend these free sessions. Feel free to tell anyone in your network who might benefit, Sked customer or not. This is about helping our entire community in these unprecedented times. We do have something to say, so we're trying to help you say that, right? We're hoping to hold a number of these sessions. So if you have enjoyed this, or you have anyone that you think we need to talk to, or topics that we need to cover, please feel free to get in touch with me on meg@skedsocial.com, and we'll see what we can do. Until next time, stay well and make sure you stay home. Thanks.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thanks,
Meg.
Meg, for
Thanks, everyone.
facilitating.